Okay, let's dive in. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at, well, a pretty intense piece of political speech, an excerpt from the Knesset, given recently.
Yeah, and it's really framed as a direct response, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The core of it is the speaker hitting back hard against this claim from the opposition about absolute failure in achieving the war goals.
Exactly. That sets the stage immediately. It's confrontational.
Highly confrontational, yeah. It positions the whole thing as a rebuttal, a counter-narrative right from the start.
So our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to unpack this specific text. We want to understand the arguments the speaker is making, the successes he's claiming front by front, and also his very strong critique of the opposition and media.
Right. Strictly based on the words in this excerpt. It's about seeing the situation through the lens of this particular speech.
Okay, so let's start right where the source does, with that immediate pushback on the absolute failure idea. He asks that rhetorical question, doesn't he? Are you living on planet Earth or another plate? Kind of dismissive.
Totally dismissive. It's not about engaging the claim. It's about instantly framing the opposition as out of touch, delusional almost, a way to discredit them before even starting the defense.
And then he just pivots straight into the counterclaim. Not just some achievements, but so many achievements on so many fronts.
And he calls them unprecedented achievements. That's key. He's not just saying we did okay. He's claiming a historic level of success. That's the foundation for refuting that absolute failure charge.
Right. Okay, and this is where it gets, well, really detailed. He goes through these claimed successes, front by front. Where does he start?
He kicks off with Gaza, calls it the War of Revival, notes it's been 600 days, and he connects it all back to something he said right after October 7th about changing the face of the Middle East. He says, basically, we said we'd do it, and look, this is exactly what we did.
So presenting it as a long-term strategy coming to fruition.
Precisely. And then he gets specific about action.
Yeah, what does he list there? Repelling terrorists, entering Gaza with force.
Eliminating, he claims, tens of thousands of terrorists. And he names Diaf, Sinwar, Mohammed Sinwar, high profile.
Presenting those eliminations as proof of dismantling Hamas's core.
Exactly. Concrete metrics, or at least claimed metric, of success against their military structure.
He also talks about destroying countless terror infrastructure.
Right.
And territory.
Yeah, claiming control over the perimeter, the Philadelphia route, Erez crossing, and more recently, the Marag route.
Why are those specific places important in his narrative?
Well, controlling them is framed as vital for containment, right? Blocking smuggling, asserting physical dominance. Philadelphia, especially, relates to the border with Egypt. Claiming control there suggests sealing Gaza off, degrading Hamas's operational freedom.
Okay. And capabilities, reduced weapons, less rocket fire.
Yes, claims Hamas's weapon supply is reduced and rocket fire from Gaza is down almost entirely. And he adds the return of civilians, saying about 90% of envelope residents are back.
So neutralizing the immediate threat and restoring some normalcy for Israelis.
That's the picture he paints, yes. Evidence that safety is being reestablished.
And there's that interesting bit about food distribution, too. A recent shift.
Yeah, he mentions taking control of food distribution, frames it quite deliberately as hitting Hamas's money machine and their governance tool. So the aim, as he presents it, is destroying their governmental capacity alongside the military, hitting their civilian power base.
Okay, so that's Gaza. Then he moves on, directly tackling the zero achievements claim regarding Lebanon. He mentions Operation Beeper.
Yeah, Operation Beeper. He says it shocked the entire world. Presents it as a major, impactful event, even if the details aren't spelled out here. A significant blow to Hezbollah.
And some really striking claims about Hezbollah's leadership.
Very striking. He claims they eliminated Nasrallah and eliminated almost the entire core of Hezbollah.
Those are massive claims, neutralizing the top leader and the command structure.
Huge claims, yeah. Presented the fundamental crippling of the organization.
What else on the Lebanon front? Destroying villages, killing terrorists.
Right. Destroying terror villages on the border. Killing, he says, thousands of terrorists. Destroying most of their missile stockpile.
So a systematic takedown of infrastructure, personnel, weapons.
That's the argument. Plus, eliminating the threat of invasion to the north and, preventing Hezbollah from destroying Israel, despite what he suggests were warnings to the contrary.
And the outcome, he claims.
He says it's brought Hezbollah to its knees, created a new reality in Lebanon not seen in 50 years. And he adds, this was achieved through daily, systematic, powerful attacks that, he explicitly states, violate the existing Lebanon agreement.
So claiming decisive action changed the whole dynamic.
Fundamentally altered it, according to this speech.
Syria. Also framed as refuting zero achievement. He connects blocking Hezbollah support for Assad to Assad's collapse.
Yeah, he links the claimed elimination of Nasrallah and Hezbollah's fighting ability directly to Assad losing support. And His word was collapse.
So actions against Hezbollah are presented as having these major ripple effects on the Syrian regime itself, weakening regional opponents.
He also mentioned stopping Iran from sending reinforcements, F-16s turning back Iranian planes.
Right. Claims they prevented Iran sending 2 airborne divisions, presented as a key strategic win, disrupting a major threat and showing deterrence against Iran directly.
And the overall result claimed in Syria, Assad having no support, the regime fell because Israel took out his real army, Hezbollah presumably.
It's very strong language, almost hyperbolic, framing the regime as effectively dismantled because its key proxy force was eliminated by Israel.
And he adds improved positions, capturing Mount Hermon Peak, Damascus, Beirut, Syria, at our feet.
Extremely assertive claims of strategic dominance, yeah. That phrase, at our feet, really emphasizes the sense of overwhelming rejecting.
Okay, quickly then, Judea and Samaria. There he claims killing hundreds of terrorists, entering camps, clearing infrastructure, as has not been done since the Six-Day War.
But he adds a note there.
He does add a small caveat. There is still much more to do. Just a brief acknowledgement that it's ongoing, unlike the more definitive claims elsewhere.
And Iran gets a brief mention.
Just briefly, yeah.
Right.
What we did in Iran and to Iran listed as another achievement, but no specifics in this part of the speech.
So just summing up this section, the scope he's claiming is huge. Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea, and Samaria, Iran.
Absolutely vast. And the consistent theme is that these aren't just actions, they are unprecedented successes across multiple fronts. That's the core of his rebuttal.
Okay, so after laying all that out, he then circles back to the government's war goals, says they're unwavering. Why reiterate them at this point, do you think?
Well, the accusation was failure to achieve goals, right? So even with all the claimed successes, he needs to tie them back to the objectives. Restating the goals reinforces that there is a clear plan and implies these achievements are moving towards those goals, not just random actions.
And the goals he lists are destroying Hamas capabilities, military and governmental.
Returning all hostages, living in dead, ensuring Gaza isn't a threat anymore.
And returning evacuated citizens, but also expanding their communities.
Yes, that addition of expanding communities is interesting. It suggests going beyond just restoration.
And then he draws a sharp contrast, claiming the opposition preaches the opposite.
Which is a strong political framing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests the opposition isn't just quibbling over methods, but fundamentally disagrees with the war's objectives as he stated them. Tries to delegitimize their whole stance.
Right. Okay, and this leads us into, well, maybe the most intense part of the direct attack on the opposition and the media. The tone really shifts here.
Absolutely. He pivots from the battlefield report, if you like, to full-on political combat. It suggests he sees the domestic political fight as completely intertwined with the war effort.
And the accusations are pretty fierce. He calls the opposition detached from reality, stuck in a media bubble.
And he specifically mentions the media box of Kaplan Corner.
What's the significance of that specific phrase?
Oh, Kaplan Corner is loaded terminology in Israel. It's shorthand for a certain media political milieu, often seen as critical or left-leaning. By saying the opposition is entrenched there, he's painting them as insular, biased, out of touch with, the real people or the reality on the ground. It leverages that specific cultural shorthand.
He then makes a really serious charge, sabotaging the victory, even uses a WWII analogy.
Yeah, comparing their behavior unfavorably to the allies in WWII and calling the current enemies heirs of the Nazis, the new Nazis. That's incredibly potent rhetoric. Framing political disagreement during wartime as actively helping an enemy described in those terms, it aims to portray dissent as almost treasonous.
And urging them to stop weakening the spirit of the people, stop spreading hollow lies.
Framing their words not as critique, but as harmful propaganda that damages national morale.
He names names, too. Yair Golan, Ofer Kassif, links them to really negative comments about soldiers.
Yes, calling Golan a national insider, alleging he said soldiers kill babies as a hobby, which the speaker denies Golan actually said, but uses the reference. Then questioning why the opposition walked out for a coalition speaker, but not, allegedly, when Kassif made offensive remarks.
So personalizing the attack, associating the opposition with extreme or offensive views, especially regarding the army, and highlighting supposed hypocrisy.
Exactly. And then he goes further, claiming the government the opposition wants would rely on figures like Kassif and representatives of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Trying to paint an opposition government as inherently dangerous or unacceptable.
That seems to be the goal, yes. Linking them to groups presented as extreme or hostile.
And the media gets drawn into, along with so-called experts.
Right. Accused of supporting the opposition's one-sided propaganda show, which he claims goes against the spirit of the nation.
So media and experts aren't neutral observers in this view, but active participants in undermining the government.
That's the portrayal. Working with the opposition, against the people's will, essentially.
There's also that accusation about international criticism, that the opposition causes it themselves.
Yeah, the idea that they blacken the name of Israel in the world and then complain when the world attacks Israel, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy argument, blaming them for the negative attention.
He also tackles the democracy accusation head-on, flipping it back.
Right. Says they shout democracy while crushing democracy yourselves. He sort of redefines their actions, challenging officials, trampling officialdom, hindering the government during war as anti-democratic.
And contrasts it with a previous government facing, he claims, fewer obstacles.
Exactly. It's a rhetorical jujitsu move, using their own likely accusations against them.
This connects to fake cases and investigations, too.
He claims the opposition uses fake cases. Fake case. Another fake case explodes to try and jail opponents, accusing them of weaponizing the legal system for political ends.
While simultaneously accusing the government of running a poison machine.
Yes, he claims they are the ones using a poison machine tactic, spreading false, damaging information, precisely what they might accuse his side of.
And he doubles down on that, saying the opposition runs a well-oiled, budgeted poison industry in studios, spreading poison, hate, incitement, divisiveness.
It's a very direct counterattack, using their likely language against them. He calls it a mountain of hypocrisy, amplifying the claim that they're guilty of the very things they criticize.
Finally, on this critique section, he brings up equality in the burden, the conscription issue.
Right. Claims hypocrisy there, too. Says the opposition promised religious parties mountains and hills, basically anything, for past coalition support.
Contrasting that with his government trying to pass a real, balanced, applicable conscription law that will conscript thousands, while claiming the opposition conscripted no one.
So framing it as past political expediency versus a current, genuine, if maybe imperfect, effort to address the issue, portraying his government's actions as more sincere on this front.
Okay, so after all that the battlefield claims, the intense domestic attack, he pivots back to public support. He makes a very strong claim. Majority of the people support us.
And dismisses polls.
Explicitly dismisses them, calls them engineered, rigged, manipulated. It's a way of sidestepping potentially unfavorable data and claiming a deeper connection to the true public will.
And his evidence for this support?
Personal anecdotes. I go out to the street. I go out to the supermarket. People say simply, Bibi, don't stop. Continue until the end, until absolute victory.
So presenting these chance encounters as more authentic than polling data.
Yeah, it's a common tactic. Evoking that direct connection, contrasting it with mediated statistics the people on the street know, that sort of thing.
And he links this directly to absolute victory, saying that's what the public wants. Right? He circles back to that phrase, absolute victory, which came up in the anecdotes, and defines it, tying his goals to this alleged public demand.
What's his definition here?
Returning hostages, eradicating Hamas, uncovering leaders, and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip.
So reinforcing those core objectives again, framing them as non-negotiable and backed by the people.
Exactly.
And how does this speech excerpt wrap up?
With a final declaration, really, asserting they won't give up on absolute victory, will defeat enemies, return hostages, strengthen Israel, bring more achievements, ending with Am Yisrael Chai and Am Yisrael is strong and Am Yisrael is achieving achievement.
A very determined, assertive ending.
Yeah, reinforcing resilience, strength, ongoing success, despite everything.
So if we step back and look at this whole excerpt, we've unpacked the battlefield claims, the political attacks, the public support assertions. What does this deep dive really offer you, the listener?
Well, I think by sticking just to the source, you get this incredibly direct insight into how one very specific, very prominent political narrative is constructed during a really complex conflict. You see exactly which achievements are highlighted, how goals are framed, and maybe most importantly, how domestic opponents and critics are portrayed and attacked.
And you see how it all weaves together, right? The military claims bolster the political arguments, and the political attacks aim to undermine anyone questioning those claims.
Precisely. It's all interconnected. And understanding this specific narrative, drawn straight from the speaker's words, is crucial. It shows you how these complex realities get filtered, framed, and fought over in the political sphere. It helps you identify the specific claims, the logic being presented by the speaker, and the rhetorical tools used to shape perception. Being informed means understanding these competing narratives, like the very detailed one laid out here.
It really underscores how, in such a fraught situation, different people can look at the same events and build completely different stories of success or failure, using their own evidence and pretty intense counterattacks.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for you to consider, stemming purely from this source material. Given the speaker's strong assertion of these numerous unprecedented achievements across so many fronts presented as definitive proof against failure, and his simultaneous claim that the majority of people support this view and want absolute victory, regardless of poll. What does this particular speech excerpt reveal about the sheer difficulty of finding common ground, of establishing any kind of shared reality or national consensus when you're in the midst of such a divisive multi-front conflict?
That's definitely a heavy question raised by the stark contrasts within. A lot to think about.
Indeed it is.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source.